Hello, everyone. It's Kate Stillman with Wellness Pro Academy, and I'm here with Cheryl Kagan, who's been in yoga health coaching, and she's had some, shall we say, challenging issues, some critical issues around running her membership group, with having particularly challenging member or two. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, you were telling me, Cheryl, just a minute ago that there's a lot also expanding in the field. So why don't you just give me a bit of an overview and update, and we'll dive in.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So, yeah, I knew that it was a possibility that members would get really uncomfortable with this work, with their journey, working with yoga and Ayurveda. As we know, it can kind of crack us wide open and leave us pretty exposed and vulnerable, and it can be a really uncomfortable place to be. Mm-hmm. So I've always felt that it was important for members to stay in touch, to come to the class calls when they can, to show up for their coaching calls. But what I've run into with a couple people is that they disappear. Mm-hmm. And so finding that balance between honoring them at their own pace and in their own time, not adding any pressure or you should be here or you should be there. Yeah. But what's that boundary between letting them go at their own pace, but yet holding them accountable and having them participate? Because what I've learned is that not only are they not, getting their money's worth, if you will, their value out of the course, but it can be really detrimental, is what I've just discovered happened with a member.
Yeah. And it sounds like from what you told me before, she wasn't particularly stable, like mentally stable. Is that or something like that?
Right, which didn't really show up until later. I mean, this is a woman that I've known for several years. I've been her yoga teacher. I've done private yoga therapeutic sessions with her, and this just like came out of nowhere. And yeah.
The first thing I want to say is like it's totally normal. Like it happens. And so I'm not sure, often I find we hold ourselves against like perfection and it doesn't allow for reality. And so in my experience, like, yes, challenging situations with members will arise. And to me, it's like fewer and fewer all the time. Like the better you built structure to prevent that. So one of the first things that I would emphasize here is like, there's questions. We even put questions in our forms, not for all of our strategy sessions, but for some of our strategy sessions or some of our courses. Like we have an application form for Living Our Ayurveda course, and it asks directly, like, how will, you're entering a dynamic group, how will you show up for the group to contribute? So that's like an early point of conversation where we're setting our expectations before point of enrollment.
Okay.
So what I've tried to do a lot is to move onboarding, because you could say, well, a lot of that for some people happens in onboarding, where they lay out the expectations of this is how to show up in a group, and this is this is how the group acts, and these are the commitments. Whenever there's an issue like this, I actually push it before point of sale. I'm gonna draw this on the screen.
Okay.
So in yoga health coaching lately, we've been talking a lot about, and this is my marketing funnel, this is the point of sale, and this is onboarding, and course membership. This is where someone becomes a course member, and this is the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and so here's where, like, yeah, there's people that already know you, and there's people that don't know you, but they hear of you from word of mouth, and they go through a process, it's something like this. They go through a process to become course members, and we've looked a lot in yoga health coaching lately about what are the experiences people need to have to become course members, and then what beliefs actually need to change to become course members. And this should all happen before the agreement. So when there's a core issue, and when there's an issue within course membership, and I just got to emphasize, Cheryl, like, this, everything I'm teaching you right now is from scar tissue. You know, like these are the worst lessons to learn. These are the least fun lessons to learn because they often involve either challenging people, people with mental health issues, people with boundary issues, people with addiction issues. But what's beautiful about it is they can highlight weaknesses in our process.
Yeah.
And when they highlight weaknesses in our process, we take that issue and we say, where could we work that into before point of sale?
Exactly what I was going to ask you. Thank you. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because then we're saying like, oh, first of all, we're proactive. So it's going to change our nervous system. We're going to feel a lot less vulnerable. We're going to feel a lot less like, wait, this is happening to me, or victim, rather than, wait, I'm actually designing an experience. There were pieces that were missing. So maybe what's happening before point of sale, before credit card, maybe there's a contract that's signed, you know, and maybe that contract even includes how you'll show up in the community. Maybe you put that as a line in your contract. I mean, I have signed contracts like that. I attended an event not too long ago. I signed 2 contracts actually in the last 4 months. Like, in order to come to this event, this is how you need to behave. This is a collaborative, supportive, non-salesy, non-competitive environment that's high in consciousness. And like, if you agree, that means you can behave accordingly. And if you can't, it means, well, you'll be asked to leave. Sign, then pay. Interesting, right?
Yeah. So Kate, you used the word contract. Can I translate that into to an agreement? Are those the same thing?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Contract or agreement. Yeah, exactly. And it just means that, well, and the point I want to make with these 2 events was, I am absolutely certain that they had the issue. And then they went back and fixed it for the next one. You know what I mean? Like, they'd already had the same issue you're having. So I just want you to understand that, like, when you think that you did something wrong or you're the only one, it's really easy to create more drama around the situation or to have more entanglement in your nervous system. At least this is what I found. When I started to recognize it, oh wait, this is a structural issue, this is a procedural issue, that like this is a process. And process is, you know, it's somewhat related to the word procedure, which means that there's things that happen, there's a trauma or an order, and you get to continually improve that process. The process of how someone hears about you, the process of the strategy session, the process of, you know, the deep dive conversation, the process of fishing for mental instability or addiction issues, or, you know, anything that you're like, this doesn't work for my community. I just got to make sure that you're good to go. And the beauty of this is it's really a nurturing experience for the prospect because they're experiencing a level of professionalism. For instance, when I signed those contracts, it was super clear, like how to act, how to show up, how everyone else was going to show up. And I was even more engaged because someone had been mindful of how a collaborative group functions.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. So what if in the intake process, the strategy session, what if some of these things pop up that are beyond my scope of practice, like an eating disorder, like a history of bipolar, like a history of, I mean, any number of things? Does that mean, I mean, how do you discern if that means that they're not a fit for my coaching? Or should that, I mean, would I still just coach them the same? You know what I mean?
I would be, so if that comes up in the intake, which it should, as you're getting to know someone, and let's use bipolar first as an example. So for the person that's bipolar, they might not, you know, they might not be able to actually sign the agreement, like in good faith. Like they might know themselves well enough to be like, yeah, I mean, one thing you can ask them before, like, how have you shown up in groups in the past? How have you committed to something and not been able to follow through? So when we have issues with course members dropping out or not showing up or not being engaged, it kills the group, right? It kills the dynamicism of the group. And it sucks for everybody else because they got connected and attached to a member that, you know, and now there's, you know, it's like when your team's missing the halfback, it's a bummer.
The other thing I've noticed is that when they're absent and then when they just pop on all of a sudden into class, it's disruptive because the group hasn't built that, the group has built an intimacy level without them. So, you know, when they pop in, it's like, oh, who are you?
Yeah, there's an outsider.
Disruptive, yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is my guess, is that because you're having such a big experience with this, like you're gonna know what questions to ask to either, again, so say the person's bipolar, and you don't want to necessarily like discriminate against all those that are bipolar, because we've helped a lot of people that have bipolar, I would say, in our extended coaching community. But what you might say is like, this is the deal. You've got to care as much about the group's experience of you as your experience of the group. You know, and you've got to convince me that, because, you know, if they've had issues with commitment in the past, and emotional stability. I have found this also with addiction. Like we really try to not have people that are addicted, you know, alcoholics or in like an active drug use of a, you know, and an addiction phase with drugs. It's like, it just doesn't work because they're not committed to their own healing process. And it was like drama in my life that helped me figure that one out of like, nope. That's no good. That's never worth it. Right?
So it sounds like there needs to be more of a history intake with the strategy call. I mean, I haven't been really asked. I asked them, you know, where do you want to be in your body? And, you know.
Yeah. So you didn't know this woman was bipolar, or the anorexic woman was anorexic?
No. There were some red flags because, you know, I've seen enough of it in my nursing career to understand and see it. That's why I kept contacting her. Hey, let's meet for coaching call. Hey, let's meet for tea. Blah, 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 blah. But I don't get like a health history or intake before I do the strategy call.
Mm-hmm. You know, and it's occurring to me like one of this is the old one. I'm not sure where my files are right now. Let me just do a new screen share. The other thing, actually, before I close this screen out, is you can also reinforce the agreement, reinforce. We used to be super sticklers for this. Like yoga health coaching and Body Thrive have been through so many evolutions over time that there's certain periods where it's like we focus on something and less on another. So the ground rules for dynamic groups, we used to always open with this. I believe the mentors still do in their mentor coaching call, where they open with a dynamic ground rule. The first ground rule is be all in. Isn't that, you know, and why? Because it's like, that's what allows a group to become dynamic. And just to your point, so now you might be hypersensitive to this in a good way and say, you know what, we've had people in the past, now you have stories, you've got scar tissue, use them. We've had people in the past who have been challenged, you know, have been challenged in their mental health, have been challenged in commitment. And the thing is like, this group works as a dynamic group, meaning we evolve together. And this is what you're describing, right? Most people entering a dynamic group have actually been trained to be passive, skeptical, and energetically separate from the group. Okay, so we're going to assume that people don't know how to do this. The ground rules guide you to attune, engage, amplify. Again, you can bring this into marketing and you can say, hey, go through this list and tell me which are the ones you're going to have the biggest problem with. You know, or you could do it as part of the sales process and say like, hey, read this over. And I just want to run, because, you know, from our intake, I'm sensing that, you know, I want to make sure that a few of these you're really going to be able to commit, because that's how I'm going to be able to help you the most. So then be all in. Dynamic groups gain traction when every member is engaged. Being all in turns on our ability to listen for deep truth, blah, 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 right? Like there's all the reasons. These are all the reasons. Dynamic group, we have each other's back, safe space for growth, or growth space. Right? No domination, no lurking, no disconnect. So Prioritizing their growth. They're clearly not doing this either. Nurturing identity evolution, because there's going to be triggers that happen in the group where they could grow. Reach in when you tweak out. So this is probably the biggest ones. Reach in when you tweak out, be all in, be ready for action. So the more you bring this in before point of sale and the more you reiterate it after point of sale, these issues go away. Even for people who are challenging, because the people who are often like super challenging, they haven't often been supported. Like they haven't been part of a dynamic group.
Mhm.
You know, so you have to train them in it. If you're going to take any member you're taking on, assume you're going to have to train them in how to be part of a dynamic group. Evaluate whether or not it's worth it, because some people you're like, nope, too much energy is going to go into that. It's just not worth it, and the group won't be the same group as it would be without them. Some people come in and just be like amazing, and they'll make it 10 times easier because they'll naturally be leaders within the group. And you see that all the time in my community.
Mhm.
Hard one, right? Like I had to overcome, you know, this process that I'm teaching you. It's like, no one taught me that. No one taught like put onboarding before point of sale on any critical issue that arises in the community. It's like, I learned it through strategic planning and applying it to my problems, to my critical issues. And that's how I figured that part out.
Okay. This is so helpful because what I found is that I'm really good at marketing. I'm really good at strategy calls, and I'm really good at getting people excited and enthused. And I just kind of do my thing and they get so excited and they say yes.
Yes.
And I feel like I maybe am too quick to bypass some of these things.
Right. Whenever we're having issues after the sale, it means that something could happen before the sale. I so strongly believe in that. So a question that and I learned this in sales, is like, what could keep you, like after I take your credit card, like what could really keep you from showing up and being all in? Like what's gonna stop you? Like I know the group's gonna meet your needs. Like what's gonna stop you from like really showing up in your, you know, and then, or what's gonna, you know, where is, for some people it's around like buyer's remorse. Like what's gonna keep you from following through? And you can ask that before you take a credit card or after. It works both ways. And it doubles down on their commitment. It's an interesting thing. It's like it's like a push-pull.
Mm-hmm.
Or then they actually get, but you're training them. Like this, they're having an experience where they're considering like, okay, like this group is serious. Cheryl's serious. I gotta be all in. If I wanna get out of this group, but I wanna get out, like I've gotta be all in. And you keep re-emphasizing that experience.
So then if through the course, that hasn't really stuck as much as I'm hoping, and they do start to bump up against.
So then you start every meeting with ground rules for dynamic groups. Every meeting you start with someone read a ground rule.
I do, actually. Oh, not the same one, or I start with the ground rules, yeah. But then when they disappear, what is my boundary as the coach to keep going after them? I mean, how long does the chase go on before,
I would just have the rules. Like, this is how it's going to go if you disengage. Just write your own rules out.
Ahead of time.
Yeah, now. Like, you get off this call and write out, like, these are the agreements, these are the rules, this is it. And this is the effort that I'll make if I find you're disengaging. This is exactly what I'm going to do. If you still stay disengaged, that's it.
Okay. And then
they know and you know, and there's no surprises. And that'll help your nervous system balance as well.
Okay. Because I had engagement in my agreement form, but there was really nothing about me asking them to leave or, if they're disruptive. I mean, this woman sent an email to the community that was incredibly disruptive. And she, of course, left after that. I did discharge her. But I don't have that in my agreement. I don't have that. I reserve the right to so I've learned that pretty quick.
Yeah, so you can also have an agreement about emails and connection around like any email that goes to the group needs to go through you first, or that sort of thing. Like you're creating a safe space for your members that was unsafe for your members. I'm not saying it's your fault.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone in here will end up with people that have addiction and mental instability. And I'm not trying to take all the blame off of the wellness pros, because we can improve our structure, to eliminate that. Not entirely, but we can just do better. And this is what I keep finding, Cheryl, is like, it's been years since I've had drama, but I had years of drama, and I had to grow up in certain ways, and my team had to grow up in certain ways with customer service. And that makes all the difference, because you're just like, okay, this is a customer service issue, this is an agreement issue, this is an onboarding issue, this is a coaching issue. But you'll be able to you'll see red flags in the future. Like I'm guessing you're not going to repeat the same issue. Let's talk about the person with eating disorders. That's a different person?
Yeah. Well, no, the same person.
Okay, so bipolar and eating disorder.
Just eating disorder. I was just using bipolar as an example.
Yeah. And fair enough. Okay, so eating disorder can be also, depending. I was interviewing Durga Leela today on yoga recovery, and she has it under addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's like, okay, so there's a level where if someone's already, and I've helped people overcome eating disorders. I mean, there's one woman was in Living Ayurveda course, it's been 12 years ago, long time ago. She'd been bulimic since she was a teenager. She came in at 50. Within a year, she was done, over it, like nourishing. It was so beautiful. I mean, it just, these tears of gratitude, right? Like she was able to completely resolve. So it's going to really depend on the individual and your radar, I would say for it. Did you have, when you look back, like what would your radar have told you differently?
So from the get-go, like so she was in my pilot actually a year and a half ago. And when we got to earlier, lighter dinners, it was kitchery. That's all she was eating was kitchery. So at that point, we were having some coaching calls, and I was able to inform her that kitchery is good, for like a little cleanse or a few days, longer if you're working under the guidance of a Vaidya. But, what are some other foods you like to eat? What are some, what sounds good to you right now? And I guided her towards eating other foods. She said her favorite food was hamburgers. So I said, go have a hamburger. Mm-hmm. Have your hamburger at the noonday meal. And she did, and she texted me. She was so excited because she ate a hamburger. And the red flags went up, and she stayed with me for most of that first session, but then just slowly disappeared. Mm-hmm. So I was concerned.
You will lose people like that. Things come up in people's lives and etc. One of the things that I have found in having larger groups is it protects the group from that. There's just less commotion when one person leaves because there's enough people there.
Yeah. Well, I'm coming up on, in August, probably I'll have 22 people, I think.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll help.
You. So when did you start YHC?
In August of 21.
Fantastic.
So I'm due for mastery in.
You're not even a year in, and you're 22. That's great. And what's your price point?
Right now it's at 2,800.
Great.
But I'm gonna bump it up, I think, kind of the next go round. But I have to say, Kate, that this took the joy out of my coaching for a while. Yeah. And I mean, I had to really dig deep and figure out what this triggered in me, and what's in my lane and what's in her lane. And learn how to kind of separate that. I'm a nurse. So, I had to switch hats and say, wait a minute, I'm not a nurse. I'm not here to take care of her. I'm a coach. I'm here to coach her.
Yeah.
And because I've never been the recipient of transference, if you will, and some of the hostility and some of the things that can go along with that. So this has been a huge learning curve for me.
Yeah.
And I'm fucking exhausted right now, honestly. So I just closed my session yesterday and we're on break now, and I'm so glad.
Good. Yeah. Get some body work and be in water and
mountains. I'm headed up after this call, actually. So
and I think you're on the right track in terms of you'll get to compassion and forgiveness, and you'll get to process and procedure, and then there's just red flags that'll come up, and you'll say, this is why, and you might even lead. It'll become a story. It'll be processed into scar tissue, and you'll be able to lead your group from it. Because now you know what doesn't work.
Yeah.
So you're talking about group commitment. It's like, it doesn't work. And you're not chasing members down, and some of the warning signs. And the more you make that teaching explicit to yourself, you won't repeat it.
And just having that structure beforehand, like you so clearly guided me through, I can see where I've missed some pieces there for sure.
Yeah. So the other thing is, like, absolutely charge more. Like, why not? I mean, if you charge on there $500, no one's going to notice. You're going to have more. You can say, it's like more commitment, because this group, it's about dynamic groups. It really is. It's like, that is a huge part of our methodology, because it works. It's proven. They'll get there faster. And you have to say it, like, certain people are not qualified. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions to see if you're qualified for a dynamic group. And what's great is that it actually, people who, and we did this a while, where we wouldn't accept people into courses until they passed a certain qualification session, right? And like, anyone can use this in yoga health coaching. It's like, have qualifications. Like, these are what are going to qualify you to be in here with us. And it actually adds value without you needing to sell them on it.
Yeah.
Trains them, adds value, gets them to self-consider.
And I feel like this is going to be even more important, because really most of the people that are coming to me are word of mouth or referrals.
Yeah.
So but the further, I feel like the bigger the community gets and the more outreach, the less connected I'm going to be. I mean, I know nothing about some of these new people other than what I've learned through 2 strategy sessions. I always do at least 2 now.
Good. So yes and no, like, use liberating structures. Are you you haven't been to a live event with me yet, right?
No, I actually registered for Alta, but my daughter is going to have surgery, so I had to cancel. I'm so disappointed.
We'll do one I think we're doing one in Jersey, and then we've got Mexico, but you'll see how intimate and connected, and how, I mean, we have, I often have 50 on a Body Thrive call, but there's a level of intimacy and connection that I do notice that scales if that's your intention. And so I always go towards the person I feel like I've neglected the most. That's what I try to train my attention to, is it's like, who have I not connected with? And that's part of liberating structures, is you connect with the people that you've connected with the least. And that's what builds the field. And you train the old members to do that with the new members through liberating structures. And we'll be adding, as we develop the Wellness Pro Academy, we're going to develop a lot more liberating structures for the health coaches.
Nice.
Wellness pros. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say, like, you don't have to hold that belief at all. You can believe, you can trade that belief out with, like, as your group grows, the group culture grows. And the group culture trains in the new members. And so they're there to attune to the group culture. Like, that's their first job, is attunement. And I tell this people in sales calls. I was actually just telling someone this before you and I got on the phone. It's like, your first job, like, in the group, is just to be there and attune to the frequency and receive. Just receive from the group, because the group's already operating at a high frequency. So there's nothing you need to do. Just show up and attune. We used to, in YHC, we used to make, or was it in Body Thrive? This was a while ago. We used to have people in listen only mode for a month. Like they could not ask a hand, like they could not, they just had to hang out and attune so that they would adjust, they would calibrate their nervous system to the nervous system of the group. And then we added, it was in Body Thrive, I think. Well, no, it was in YHC. And then we added the YHC mentors in their own 1 month onboarding with new members. So then they're only interacting at that level before coming in. And it works, you know, and that's, again, we just build structure as the group grows so that we maintain or even grow the higher level of vibrational power of the group culture.
Sort of like learning mantra, right? You just listen to the mantra first before you learn the meaning. You embody that vibration of the mantra.
And you might like hear it in your head right before you voice it. Like it's so that subtle to gross. Yeah. So I got to tell you this, like, I think you're doing a phenomenal job. I think this was probably a kind of a rite of passage type experience for you to be able to handle more and give your group an even better experience in the future with less effort as you tune more into creating group culture. You know, maybe it's time to choose a mentor or two from within the community to help uphold group culture, to lead the part about dynamic group ground rules, et cetera. You know, just like give off some of the leadership responsibility, like you've seen us do, like promote an assistant from within the community. Wow. You know.
So if this comes up again, what is the best way to reach out to YHC? I know our mentors, but they didn't feel able to really help with this.
Well, you'll be in mastery. So a lot of these issues come up more in mastery, and that's why we have the mastery coaching gyms.
Okay.
So I would say there, the mastery forum, the mastery mastermind groups, like a lot of the structure in there is much more interactive for this type of problem solving. The first year YHC, like people are like learning the habits and doing strategy sessions for the first time, pricing, packaging, enrolling, coaching. Yeah. And so these are more advanced issues that tend to come up. So the structure of the mastermind group, I think you're going to love it. You know, having mastermind partners, having we set your agenda. And again, this is part of the structure. It's like, I'm going to structure your guys' agenda. I'm going to put you through a mastermind training to enter a mastermind group. You'll sign a contract to enter a mastermind group that's agreeing to how, like, I'm just trying to demonstrate every step of the way of like hard lessons learned. We don't like people dropping out of mastermind groups, you know? So it's like the commitments up front, the agendas are up front. Like this is how these are super effective, and you get trained in how to be in there. And then you'll just have these bright ideas from that of like, I'm going to use this part in my community.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah, enjoy your rejuvenation. You deserve it. Nice work.
Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about this, because it's been a big learning experience.
Yeah, I know. Believe me.
I'm sure you do.
Am I crazy or are they crazy? And what else did I want to say? Yeah, I can't wait to meet you in person. So I'm sure it'll happen in the future.
It would be nice. Yeah, I was very disappointed, but so goes life, right?
Yeah, totally. Divine timing. Okay, take care.
Okay, thank you, Kate.
You bet. Bye.
Bye-bye.